Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. This is Coffee with Katie. Got me give me some sugar mug today. And today's coffee is Margarita by Coffee Beanery. And before we get into today's video, I do have a small unboxing from Coffee Beanery because I order coffee frequently and from them frequently. So I'll show you my flavors that I got this month. This is from the May and the June flavors, I believe. These are not the July flavors. They have not been announced yet, but I'll show you these. The first one I got that was from May is Pistachio Macaron, however you say it. Right there. And that's just really fun. I really like macarons, macaroons. They're one of my favorite desserts because a lot of the times they're gluten-free as well, and they're just really fun. And then the next flavors that I got are from the June collection, which I believe was Let's Go Camping. And this one is the Samoa S'more coffee. Right there. It says the adventure begins, which is super cute. They had a whole s'mores collection, so I got 2 of the s'mores flavors, but there was 4 s'mores flavors total. And the next one we got says Let's Go Camping, and it's the grasshopper s'more. So this one, I don't know if I explained this, this one's supposed to be graham cracker, peppermint patty, and marshmallow. And the Samoa one is supposed to be graham cracker, almond joy, and marshmallow. So I thought these would be fun to try out. I haven't had any of these coffees yet, but stay tuned. I will let you know how they are at a later time. All right, now that that's out of the way, today's video is going to be a book review for Vicious by VE Schwab. I was able to read this in June, towards the very end of June. Just really wanted to get a review up here, guys. I know this isn't new. I know a lot of you have probably read it, but if you haven't, or you're just curious on my thoughts on it, I wanted to get a review up just because I wanted to talk about it. So hopefully you guys want to hear about it. And kind of what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to format it in the same way that I did my previous book review, which is going to have a section where I'm just going to kind of talk about some of my thoughts and a little bit of like a recap or synopsis of the book. And then I'm going to have a spoilery section where I'm just going to kind of unfiltered talk about the book. It's sometimes hard for me to discuss a book without ruining anything, spoiling anything. So that's why I'm going to have a whole separate section where I can just kind of unleash and tell you my thoughts about the book without spoiling anything for anyone that doesn't want to be spoiled. But if you have read it and you just want to see what I think, or if you are curious but you don't mind spoilers, then I will talk about it. I will let you know. All right, so let's just get into it. Vicious by VE Schwab. This was my first VE Schwab read, even though I'm going to be obviously doing a book review about this. I did mention it in my June reading wrap-up. I really loved this book. We can continue on with that later, but I really loved this book. Again, my first VE Schwab read, but even from the premise of this book, it's kind of one of those things where if you know your reading tastes, and obviously things can happen where you think you're going to love a book and then you don't, but from the synopsis of this book, immediately I knew I was going to love it. I thought, there's no way I'm not going to love this. And my husband actually read it a few years ago, and he said, I think you're going to like it. I love morally gray characters. I love villainous characters. So I thought this was going to be 100% up my alley, and it was. It was kind of like setting me up that I didn't know how I wouldn't love it unless it was like terribly done, which it's not. And I'm going to say it now for the record for everyone to hear. This is my favorite book of all time. For a while, it was very hard for me to say that I had a favorite book, just one book. Because like, obviously I love the Caraval series. It's one of my favorite series. But if you were to tell me to pick one of those and for one of those to be my favorite book, I don't think I could do it. And the same for a lot of other books or a lot of other series. I don't think I could pin down a favorite book until now. This is my favorite book of all time. I can't believe I'm even saying it. It feels so surreal to say that. But I loved it. I loved it so much. There's so many morally gray characters in this. Okay, let me stop. Rewind. I will give you a summary of this book. So basically what this book is about is there are 2 best friends, Eli and Victor. They both go to the same university, Lockland University, and they're very intelligent, very smart, kind of at the top of their class, ahead of the game. Victor wants to go into the medical field. And I think Eli's kind of on the same thing, but more of like the science and like improving the human body standpoint. I don't really actually remember exactly what Eli's thing is, but I know it's something like that. So they're both kind of ahead of their classmates and they're doing really well in this university. So you know that about them, but where the book picks up, like the beginning of the book, is 10 years in the future and they're enemies. arch nemesis, whatever you want to say, they're enemies. And so the entire time you're reading this book and you're going through it is you're figuring out what their friendship was, what it used to be, how it unraveled, and how they became enemies. And that they're now trying to like kill each other in this book, basically. You get to see the descent of their friendship, you get to see the unraveling, you get to see the different aspects that come into play of that for each of their personalities. And then you get to see the timeline. So you get to see in the past, you get to see current, and then it's building up to a future event, which is at the end of the book, where they kind of face off. Or that's the intent anyway. And so the whole time you're trying to just understand why they're now enemies, their friendship that used to exist, and how everything kind of gets to that point. It was done very well. This has made me, honestly, I will just kind of expose myself right now. I have so many of VE Schwab books. So many. And I've never read any of them. But the premises always sound really good and I always feel like I'll really like them. So this was the first one that I wanted to pick up from her. I loved it, so I feel like I'm gonna read so much of what she writes now, even though I don't think anything will top this, but we'll see. I just really loved how it was all villainous, morally gray characters, and how dark this was, and the different perspectives that you get that are very intriguing, and how almost all of the characters, if not all of the characters, are very unlikable. Like, as humans, they are unlikable. Like, if you ran across any of them on the street, you would not think that they're that likable of a person if you know their personality and you know their, like, inner thoughts. I just loved that the whole point is that these characters are unlikable and how dark and gray it was, morally gray. I love seeing people's dark sides and I love being able to kind of, like, dissect that, so that was so cool. Victor's point of view was really interesting. He's the main point of view. There's a couple other point of views, but he's the main one. He was my favorite. But it was interesting to see the different hints or tells of sociopathy in both of the main characters, even though it's not fully explored or explained that way. I feel like the dynamics between each of the characters was very interesting because there was manipulation or there was trust or camaraderie and just very different things, but they're, again, all very dark, not good people. So it's just very interesting to see the dynamics and all of it connecting together and how it all played out. It was really cool to see. It was also interesting to see Eli's character and how he develops throughout the book and the kind of villainous aspects that come out in him, because he's kind of portrayed as a more good person. You're seeing the interpersonal relationships, you're seeing how all of this plays out to this big, like, villainous battle, essentially. And I think it was so well done. I think the ending, I think Victor is a mastermind and you can kind of, you get to see pieces of that while you're reading it. And then I think the ending was intentional on his part. I think he planned it. We'll get into that in the spoilery part, but I think he planned it. I think he knew that was gonna happen. He knew that's what he had to do and he was counting on the rest of them figuring that out. I'll also throw in some of my favorite quotes in this part. So again, villainous characters, not good people. One of the quotes he has, it's on page 161, I believe. I'm pretty sure all of my favorite quotes are from Victor, but one of my favorite quotes is, "No one is going to hurt you. Do you know why?" She shook her head, and Victor smiled, "Because I'll hurt them first." And another one he has is when he tells this character that she needs to stay where she is, and she asks why, and he says, "Because you don't think I'm a bad person, and I don't want to prove you wrong." And then there's another quote where he's basically trying to convince somebody to help him. Not even convince, but he's offering it on the table for them to assist him, and they'll get something in return. And they ask him, "Why should I help you?" And he says, "Oh, you shouldn't, but you will." I just love him so much. And I think the most famous quote of this book is, "Plenty of humans were monstrous, and plenty of monsters knew how to play at being human." Oh my gosh, it's just so good. I think the ending was done well. It definitely set it up as a cliffhanger for the next book, which I'm very excited to get to. I hope I can read it soon. I have heard that people don't like the second book as much as the first book, which makes me a little bit nervous, but hopefully I am the exception to that. I think if you like dark academia, fantasy, superheroes, and supervillains, and kind of like, I think everybody describes this as X-Men-esque. If you like that kind of vibe, like more dark superheroes, more dark villainous characters, and you like dissecting the way people think and how they get to the actions that they want to get to. And if you like scheming and like masterminds and seeing how that plays out, I think you will love this book. That's my little tiny wrap-up review thing. I know some of it's vague and weird because I have to really filter myself to not just gush at you. So we're now going to get into the spoilery part. I'm going to put a little thing up here that says spoilers. So you can come back at the end and I'll kind of wrap this video up. So just don't come back until the spoiler part is off of the screen. So that'll be your little tell. So skip this part, come back. Okay, so spoilers. I'm going to give you a more in-depth synopsis and talking more in depth about the different pieces of this plot and book. So it starts off, you're meeting Victor, and I'm going to start from like the college age, not the actual start of the book. But you're talking, so it starts off and Victor is like digging up a dead body, he's with this girl, and you later on figure out how all these characters are intertwined with each other. But Victor is studying at Lockland University, and he meets Eli. And before he meets Eli, he feels like his life is going pretty well. His parents weren't great parents, they kind of just left him to his own devices. They were like big-time authors, and they just leave him at home, and it sounds like he was very neglected, but he doesn't really, well, it's portrayed that he doesn't really care, but it had to have affected him in his development and his childhood. The heck is that noise? Literally sounds like a waterfall or a like dump truck of gravel is going on, and I don't see either of those things. So sorry if you can hear that. So he kind of has his life together. He's doing really well. He's like the top of his class. And he meets this girl named Angie, and he had like a good rapport with Angie, and I think he liked Angie in his own way and kind of like wanted her to pay attention to him. He's introverted, he's rooming by himself, and then Eli shows up as his new roommate halfway through the semester of his freshman year. And so I believe they're friends ever since, but it seems like friendship here is a very loose term. So they're friends, they coexist, they have camaraderie, they spend time together, they like spending time together. But it seems like Victor is just enamored. He's intrigued by Eli. He kind of like wants to see how Eli ticks. And he is also trying to like poke at him. And he's fascinated by Eli and trying to pull out the kind of monster that he sees lurking underneath. But Victor is also very jealous of Eli because it seems as if Eli is kind of upstanding him. And he's very jealous of how easy it is for Eli to function, how easy his life is, how he can lie and nobody knows, how he's very popular, very charismatic, and he kind of just gets what he wants. And it's kind of overshadowing Victor, and I think that like roils in him and like festers, and he just really doesn't like it. But he doesn't hate Eli, I think at this point. He's jealous, he's resentful, and he's like trying to undo him in his mind. He's trying to figure out how he ticks. And he also has some resentment because Angie starts dating Eli, and he feels like he just keeps feeling like Eli is stealing things from him. He's taking them that should be rightfully his. So then you get to the point where they're developing their thesis and they start talking about EOs, extraordinaries, and how that could be feasibly possible for humans to become an EO, and how you could basically, in an experimental sense, cause someone to develop powers instead of it being accidental or circumstantial, but like developing the perfect scenario where you can make that happen for people to develop superpowers. And Eli's thesis, he decides, is going to be on EOs. And it comes about that Eli's trying to figure out how he could create this scenario for people to become EOs. And Victor kind of thinks about this, meditates on this, ruminates on this. And he decides that they have to try it. And he wants to try it because he doesn't want to be left behind in Eli's success. He wants to be a part of it, but he doesn't want to just be a part of it. He's afraid that if Eli figures this out and becomes like a superhero or has these EO abilities, that he's going to be a sidekick. And one of the things that he firmly states in his mind is he's like, Victor Vale is not a sidekick. Like, I am not going to be his sidekick. So he decides that he wants to be a part of these experiments and he wants to go first. And he talks about how that being a terrible mistake, and he goes first, it doesn't end well, it doesn't work the way he wants it to, so it doesn't produce the powers. Then Eli goes, he develops a power, he has super healing, so he regenerates, he heals, and he doesn't age, which you find out later. And Victor just can't stand the idea of this because Eli's worked and Victor's didn't. They have to like kill each other, bring each other back to life. It's super intense and crazy and awesome. That's how they figure out you can become an EOs. You have to have like a near-death experience, which means you have to be actually dying or dead and then come back. And he's just so eaten up on Eli's success that he develops his own experiment. It gets interrupted. He develops another experiment, and he enlists the help of Angie, Eli's girlfriend. And through this experiment, he develops an ability. And in the fray and in the circumstances, Angie ends up dead. It wasn't intentional. It wasn't on purpose. It wasn't necessarily murder, but she's dead. And this is where you see everything start to unravel. So Victor just killed Eli's girlfriend by doing an experiment that Eli didn't want him to do. And it becomes apparent that Eli is like turning Victor over to the police because of this when he confesses what happens to Eli. It's explained in a way where once you've come back from a near-death experience and you become an EO, part of your humanity is missing. It wasn't necessarily clear about what, if it's the same for everyone, or if it's just some part of your morality or humanity is gone. And the kind of the way it's described for two of them, at least, for Eli and Victor, is Eli's like, he's not afraid anymore. And it almost seems like they don't think of consequences any longer. Like the fear of that is gone. And then their empathy or compassion is also very dulled or completely gone. So it kind of delves into this like sociopathic tendency of like not having necessarily a moral compass and just doing things that you feel you should be doing, regardless if the rest of the world feels that way, like killing somebody, causing somebody torturous pain. And that was so interesting to me. So they have this like piece of their morality that's missing now. Eli sells him out to the police. So Victor's obviously upset, but not even upset because it's just his senses are dulled, his emotions are dulled. And he goes to Eli, he tries to kill him for this betrayal. And it's not even in like a rage type of way. It's like a very slow, methodical, torturous type of a way. And Eli's doing the same thing, but they're kind of talking and neither of them are really afraid. They both feel invincible. And Victor's power is kind of like a pain. So he's electrocuted. And it's basically like he can turn up a dial on someone's pain or he can take someone's pain away. It's really interesting because you wouldn't think that that's a really profound, cool, scary power, but he can make you feel so much pain that I think you can die. He can also take away your pain if he wants you on his side. So it's a really cool dynamic with his power. And so Eli basically tries to kill Victor as well in this scenario. And then you get to kind of see Eli start to unravel. Because like obviously you're at this point you're thinking Victor's evil, he's bad, he's blah, blah, blah. But then you get to see the side of Eli and him starting to become evil and bad and unravel. Eli feels like he's very religious, but he also has childhood abuse in his past. He's got scars on himself because of that. And then Victor has his like neglectful parents. And Victor has this thing where he has a, like, I would say a coping mechanism of, he takes like, there's probably an example of it in here. Where he takes a marker and he takes like his parents' book or another piece of writing and he blacks out things to say what he wants it to say. So he's got, it looks like this. And I would say that's one of his coping mechanisms and it's just like a cool quirk he has. So Victor goes to prison because of Eli. And then Eli takes on this like God complex and he says that because he's an EO that can regenerate, he doesn't harm people. Now has the opinion that all EOs are evil except for himself, of course, because of what he saw in Victor. How it all played out and Angie died and all that. And he even talks about how he's not as upset about Angie dying as he knows he should be, which is that kind of like lapse of humanity and compassion and love. So he takes it upon himself and he decides that because he's the only good EO in the whole world, that he's going to exterminate all other EOs. He obviously starts where he is, and he also tries to hide his own ability. So he becomes the more villainous character, which is interesting because it kind of paints it in a way where it's going to be the opposite in the beginning, where Victor is the villainous one and Eli is the good one. But like I said, there's no good characters in this book. And then he kind of makes a deal with another EO, which we'll get to later, that leads to his downfall. So Victor's in prison for 10 years plotting his revenge. He befriends another cellmate, they break out, and the cellmate, Mitch, kind of ends up just like following him because he doesn't know what else to do with his life. They find this girl named Sydney, and she is also an EO, and they kind of like stumble upon her while she's very injured, and Victor helps her. And so she just kind of stays with them because she has nowhere else to go as well. Somebody tried to kill her because she's an EO, so she has nowhere else to go at this point. You learn that the EO, Serena, that Eli ends up kind of striking a begrudging deal with is Sydney's sister, and they tried to kill Sydney because she had extraordinary abilities. And she's now on the side of Victor, which is really cool. And so this whole time, Victor's trying to find him, and they kind of realize that Sydney's involved in this. she can raise people from the dead. That's her ability. And Serena's is that she can basically manipulate you into doing whatever she wants. So she tells you, you will go jump off a building. You go jump off a building. So she's got a really terrifying power. And again, everyone's humanity is kind of taken from them, essentially. And they have no qualms about being able to do that. In fact, they're more bored. She's more bored that nobody can defy her than she is about qualms of what she's having these people do. And Victor is kind of the mastermind. So this whole time he's plotting and scheming and like putting up the domino pieces to watch everything fall into place. And it's really cool to see him plot like that. Like if you've read Six of Crows and Crooked Kingdom, like Kaz Brekker, like that kind of plotting, where you don't really know how everything's gonna play out, or it seems like it's going wrong, but then you find out that it's a part of the plan anyway. I love stuff like that. So I think Victor Vale did a great job of that. And you find out that Eli has actually teamed up with police, which has made him kind of untouchable in his pursuit of eliminating and murdering all of these people that have abilities. But you kind of learn that he has police backing because Serena has manipulated them to do so. So he continues his killing spree with police on his side, and Victor ends up saving one of them that Eli is trying to track down and kill. But it's funny because it's only for mutual gain. Again, Victor is not a hero, so he only does things for his own missions and gain, which is one of the reasons I really like him as a character, because he's not trying to be the good guy. And I think at one point it says, if Eli is the hero, then I guess I'm the villain. But he's not really trying to portray himself in any type of way, superhero or supervillain. And I just love that he doesn't pretend to be a hero. And I mean, he's doing things throughout the book where he's like killing people to get information, torturing people. He's not a good guy. He's not, and he's not trying to be. And I just like that he always seems one step ahead. And due to Victor's planning, he ends up cutting the tie of the manipulation around the police. And they have, right before the police show up to this huge thing. So they're like, the whole book, it's jumping from the past to the present to then leading up to this future event. And the future event is basically Eli and Victor facing off. So Victor eliminates the police manipulation before this face-off happens, but nothing comes of that yet. And then they're facing off. So Victor was shot 3 times in the original face-off with Eli and Victor right after they both became EOs and they tried to kill each other. So Victor's shooting him. He knows that Eli can heal and he can't necessarily kill him, but he's trying. And so he's like shooting him. He wants to give him the same scars that Victor himself has. And Eli in reverse uses the knives that Victor used in the first show off, and he's trying to like cut him down. And Victor can turn off a lot of his pain, but he also has to leave some, kind of in order for him to understand how much blood he's using. Because if you turn off all of your pain and you never have pain in your life, you can get very injured and die essentially because you're not paying attention to the pain. So he's doing this delicate balance of trying to fight and also stay alive. You see Victor's plan come into fruition and Eli's plan unravel. So Eli ends up killing Victor because you cannot kill Eli. He regenerates, he never ages. So he stabs Victor and he kills Victor. And the moment he kills Victor, everyone's pain comes back that he originally took away. So everyone knows he's dead that had contact with him or that was on his team. And this is very upsetting for his teammates. I really like the ending because the police show up and they arrest Eli because the manipulation was broken and they know all of these people he's murdered and that he currently just murdered Victor Vale. And so I loved the ending of that. I loved that he gets like his just desserts type of a thing, and maybe that'll play out in other books. Maybe he gets out. I don't know if he's vengeful or not, but kind of cool. And then obviously Victor's dead. That's concerning, but Sydney can raise people from the dead. So at the very end of the book, the cliffhanger is that Victor is resurrected, and that's it. So it was really great. I'm sorry if I spoiled way too much for you guys, but I just loved it so much, and obviously this was a spoilery chat portion of this, so don't hate me. But if you want to talk about this book with me, I would love to talk about it. Please interact with me in the comments. I would love to have conversations about Vicious. And now we'll get back to the non-spoilery. So now that I just ranted and raved and gushed about Vicious, I gave this book 5 out of 5 stars. This is my new favorite book. This is my favorite book of all time at this point. I loved it so much. It was so well done. If you like villainous, morally gray characters, superheroes, abilities, I would definitely pick up this book. It was amazing. I waited way too long to pick it up and I'm regretting it, but it's so good. Please let me know what you thought about this book down below. And also, don't spoil anything for me about Vengeful, but let me know what you thought of Vengeful down below. If you liked it or you disliked it as a sequel, let me know down below. I've also heard that there's a third one that was announced, but there's no date set for it. I haven't even read the second one, and I'm freaking out about that one, and I need it in my life. Okay, everyone, that is it for today's video. I'm sorry I was super rambly and just like completely gushing about Vicious, but it was so good. I loved it so much. If you have any recommendations for me off of Vicious, I would love to hear them. Please leave them in the comments down below. Please like this video if you liked it and subscribe if you want to. And if you have any suggestions of other content you would love to see, I would be very interested in what you want and would probably make it happen for you. All right, everybody, well, I will see you next time. Stay safe and caffeinated. Bye.